What's going on, guys? This is the Experienced Optimist. And today I wanted to talk about Operation Abandoned Ship. And I wanted to start this video off with a quote from James Baldwin that kind of illustrates my point of view. He states, "It can be objected that I am speaking of political freedom in spiritual terms, but the political institutions of any nation are always menaced and are ultimately controlled by the spiritual state of that nation. We are controlled here by our confusion far more than we know, and the American dream has therefore become something more closely resembling a nightmare on the private, domestic, and international levels. Privately, we cannot stand our lives and dare not examine them. Domestically, we take no responsibility for and no pride in what goes on in our country. And internationally, for many millions of people, we are an unmitigated disaster." Now, several years back, I was on a business trip to Singapore, and I was reading a Business Week magazine article, if I remember correctly. And the article I was reading said something to the effect of America for sale. Now, the customer rep that I was working with at the time looked at the magazine title and exclaimed that America was on borrowed time, basically stating that America's best days were behind it. Now, at the time, I didn't want to believe it, but several years later, I discovered that he was right. America is on the decline, and I think that most people should get out while the getting is good. Now, Winston Wu from the website Happier Abroad details the negatives that exist in America today. He states, "America has one of the worst social scenes and social cultures. There is no social or human connection with others. The environment is too socially disconnected, segregated, isolating, paranoid, and fake. It's very hard to make any normal friends. The social vibe feels very negative. Everyone wants to be left alone in their own bubble. People don't like to meet people or connect with others. Americans act too fake, arrogant, narcissistic, and toxic, making it hard to get along with them. Conversations are usually business-related only, especially with strangers. Thus, America is probably the loneliest country in the world. In contrast, in most overseas countries, and I know some people will say, well, that's not true, I come from here, I come from there, and that's not the case. But he goes on to say, there is more natural social connection. People are more genuine, real, and down to earth. So it is far easier to connect with others and make real friends. Foreign social atmospheres are more inclusive, and social life flows more smoothly and naturally. Happiness is shared with others, not kept to oneself. Friendships are more true and meaningful." Now, this brings me to a time when I went back to the Caribbean, and I met a Caribbean man that had traveled to New York to become a chef. He came back to the islands and created a type of fusion in which he mixed West Indian cuisine with dishes that he had learned while studying to become a chef in America. Let me state, the food was outstanding, but it was his laid-back demeanor of this man that I met that I admired. He did not seem to be bogged down by the narcissistic bullying atmosphere that you get here in the States and that I've, run into many times. In fact, the man lived a very simple life. Every afternoon, he would come to the beach, open up his restaurant for a couple of hours, cook some dishes, make some lemonade for me because I always specially requested it, and then go on about his business. He was not stressed. And this guy, he also didn't have to deal with this unrelenting racist attitudes that seems to be here in the States. And what got me about this guy is that he was just always generally in good spirits. You know? And when I talked to my cousin who lives in the West Indies, she talked about how there's a lot of foreigners that come down there to study, to become veterinarians, and they end up enjoying the island life, which I know about the island life since I've lived there. And it's kind of a laid-back life, and you live a simple life, and those stresses that exist in the United States just aren't there. But anyways, Winston Wu goes on to state, America's culture is fake, phony, and plastic. And it doesn't allow you to be yourself, which is the biggest inhibitor of freedom. Obviously, to fit into a fake, phony culture, one has to be fake and phony lest one be alienated and out of place. I felt this myself. As they say, in a mad society, only the mad are sane. If you have to be fake rather than be your true self, then you aren't free. America requires that you pretend to be positive, happy, optimistic, and doing great 24/7. And if you're not, excuse me. So whenever someone asks, how are you? You're expected to respond positively and say that you are doing great or doing good, even if you're not. It's very fake. In reality, life is not great 24/7. It runs in a series of up and down cycles. So America's expectation of eternal optimism and positivity is not reasonable or realistic. America basically denies human nature in trying to be so artificial. Therefore, America doesn't allow you the freedom to be honest about who you are, about what you are feeling at any particular moment. However, in other countries, you are allowed to speak honestly about how you feel, whether good or bad. People do not have the absurd expectation that you always have to be doing great because, as mentioned, overseas cultures tend to be more down to earth and authentic, not fake. And this is what I experienced in the Caribbean. Everything you say in America has to be politically correct. So you can't speak your mind freely on social issues or say anything anti-liberal or too right-wingish. Which leads me to my last point. America is a country that is extremely racist for no reason, and when someone points it out, Americans try to hide this fact or turn a blind eye to the issue. Now, some people will say that I'm trying to pull the race card, but I assure you I'm not. I've met quite a few people that are not racist and that have helped me out here in America, and they are the ones whom I compare others to when discussing this problem. You see, when you come across people who are not racist, you notice that these people act differently than others. They are more genuine. They are more honest. There is a different vibe to them altogether. Most importantly, they treat people the way that they would like to be treated. It is not that difficult, but for some reason, people in America cannot seem to grasp this simple concept. For example, I can say honestly that I experienced less racism in the Air Force. This is because in the military they pushed camaraderie and teamwork, which lends itself to people getting over petty squabbling and understanding that they have more in common than they thought. Not to say that in the military is not any racism there is, but the corporate world conversely pushes over competitiveness and skullduggery. This type of working environment promotes division and supports charismatic charlatans that prey on people's fear of one another, to the point that this type of behavior plays a big part in why racism continues to pervade American society. It is simply the same divide and conquer paradigm that has existed for eons, but Americans would rather prey on one another than work together to create a better society. It is not about working together, but being better than everyone else at the expense of the people around you. Now, it's about this time where people will try to argue you down with the idea that everyone will experience racism everywhere they go and on the same level and on some level. Now, this is true. I've traveled extensively, and it is the culture in other places that although you may experience racism in other countries, you will not experience it at the level that you do in America. It is actually quite funny, as it would seem that many in America want you to believe that every place on earth is racist so they can watch you suffer in silence. It is to this point that I believe that there is a sadomasochistic tendency in America in which people love to see others struggle. Well, I say, fuck that. Just like one guy mentioned to me the other day when he said, I'm done when describing why he was leaving America. At this point, I know exactly what he meant. And just like him, I'm done with the rampant consumerism and materialism. I'm done with the PC culture. I'm done with the narcissistic entitled attitudes and the basic lack of manners. I'm done with being treated like some criminal. And most importantly, I'm done with this bullshit racism. Operation Abandoned Ship. Now, if you like this video, like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support other MGTOW channels, and I will talk to you later.